Okay, so you know how sometimes you really want to get into a topic, like understand it properly, but without wading through tons of jargon?
Exactly. You want the real insights fast.
Well, that's what we're doing today. We're taking a deep dive into something pretty huge, the impact of Taylor Swift on the music industry. And we're looking beyond just, the hit songs.
Right. We've pulled together quite a mix of sources for this. We've got news reports on the economics, a Harvard piece looking at the legal side, like copyright.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
and a music industry guide, a survey of indie artists, what they're actually experiencing. It's good old Wikipedia, of course.
Can't forget that.
Reports on the big money music deals, and even a business school take on her strategy.
So the mission here is basically unpack all that, find the key trends, maybe some surprising connections that her career highlights in the whole music business.
That's the plan. Cut through the noise.
Great. So where do we start? That Swiftonomics thing sounds, well, catchy. Is it just a buzzword?
It sounds like one, but no, it seems pretty real. The economic impact is undeniable. Her Eras tour, for example, is credited with generating something like $5 billion in spending in the U.S. alone.
Wow, 5 billion just from the tour.
Directly. Yeah. And get this, the average fan was apparently spending around $1,300. That's not just the ticket. That's travel, hotels, merch, everything.
$1,300 per fan.
That's
That's incredible. It shows how much power a single artist can have now, right? Like driving local economies almost like a Super Bowl does.
exactly like the Super Bowl comparison someone made. But, the key difference is it's not just one city, one weekend. It's city after city, night after night. That level of engagement and spending is, well, pretty unprecedented for an artist tour.
And it's not all just happening online or digitally either. I saw something about vinyl records making a comeback. Like actually back in the UK, inflation calculations.
Yeah, vinyl's resurgence is fascinating. And
Hmm.
Taylor Swift is a huge driver of that. A lot of her fans are buying the vinyl albums, apparently, sometimes even if they don't own a turntable.
Really, just for the artwork as a collectible.
Seems like it. It's more than just listening. It's about having that physical connection, that piece of the artist. It really messes with the old ideas of how we consume music, doesn't it?
It totally does. It suggests fans want something tangible in this super digital world.
Right, and that emotional connection is key. Will Page, the former Spotify chief economist, he talks about this.
What does he say?
He argues Swift has basically just raised the bar for what artists can achieve across the board. Touring, sure, but also navigating streaming and the whole digital side of things.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into how the industry itself is changing. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Streaming felt like a threat initially.
Oh, definitely. Existential almost.
But now artists can potentially get a bigger slice from, say, download sales, like up to 30% compared to maybe 15% max from CDs back in the day.
That's the potential, yeah. Though you have to ask how significant download sales are for most artists now, with streaming being so dominant.
True. Is it more of a niche thing?
It might be. But the bigger picture is what Page calls the supply-side explosion. Think about it. Spotify gets hundreds of thousands of tracks uploaded every day.
Every day. Wow.
Yeah, apparently more music gets uploaded daily now than was released in the entire year of 1989, which is just mind-boggling.
So, loads more music, loads more artists. Paige mentioned the number of artists and songwriters in the UK tripled since Spotify launched.
Exactly, which is great for creativity, fantastic.
Mm.
But it also means, as he put it, more mouths to feed. It's just a much, much more crowded space.
And that old way of doing things, you release an album, then you tour to promote it, that's flipped too, hasn't it?
Completely. Now, it often feels like the album exists, partly at least, to give a reason for the tour. Especially after the pandemic, touring became the major revenue stream for many,
People really craved that live experience again.
for sure. But here's a catch Will Page pointed out from UK data, that live music money, it's getting more concentrated. Bigger venues, bigger artists, stadiums and festivals have more than doubled their share of the live income in about a decade.
Okay, so what does that mean for the smaller clubs, the up-and-coming artists? Are they getting squeezed out if all the money and attention is focused on these huge shows?
That's the big question, isn't it? Does the success at the top make it harder for new talent to get a foothold in those smaller, vital venues?
Okay, let's pivot slightly to something really specific but hugely significant. The whole fight over master recordings. Can you break that down a bit? The copyright stuff.
Sure. So basically, under U.S. law, there are two main copyrights in a song. There's the song itself,
Yeah.
the notes, the lyrics. That's the publishing right. Then there's the actual recording of that song, the specific version you hear. That's the master recording, or sound recording right.
Got it. Publishing and master.
And traditionally, the record label often ended up owning the masters forever. That was just how deals were often structured.
Right, which sets the stage for the Taylor Swift situation.
Exactly. When Scooter Braun's company bought Big Machine Label Group, her original label, that deal included the masters for her first 6 albums.
And she wasn't happy about that.
Not at all. She said she wasn't given a fair chance to buy them herself, and she also made allegations about bullying. Now, Scott Borgetta, from Big Machine, he disputes her version of events.
Right, there are 2 sides to that story.
There are, but the outcome was her decision, which was pretty revolutionary, really, to re-record all 6 of those albums, Taylor's version.
Which essentially devalues the original masters that Braun owned, because now there's an alternative that she controls and promotes.
Precisely. It was a bold move to regain control.
Yeah.
And it definitely sent ripples, maybe even shockwaves, through the industry. Gary Greenstein, he's a lawyer focused on tech deals.
Yeah.
He thinks Swift's actions are making copyright laws, especially around re-recordings, a really hot topic right now.
How are labels reacting then?
Well, according to Greenstein and other reports, they're trying to lock things down tighter in new contracts, pushing for much longer periods where artists can't re-record like 20 or even 30 years instead of maybe 5 or 7.
30 years. Wow. So it makes you wonder, like Greenstein asked, why would an artist sign away ownership like that today when you've got TikTok and Spotify to get your music out independently?
It's a massive calculation, isn't it? There's still the clout, the marketing muscle, the support a label can provide, but you weigh that against owning your own work.
And other artists are watching this, presumably.
Oh, absolutely. Reports suggest more artists are pushing harder to keep their master rights from the start. And Universal Music Group, one of the biggest players, apparently doubled its standard re-recording restriction time in response.
And even radio stations got involved. I heard iHeartRadio decided to play Taylor's version preferentially.
They did, which shows the power of fan demand and the perceived value of the artist-controlled versions. And the fans themselves have been actively involved choosing the new versions, sometimes even organizing to block streams of the old ones.
That level of fan loyalty and activism is really something. It shows how much power a connected artist can wield.
Definitely. And this whole focus on the value of recordings ties into another big trend, big money flowing into music back catalogs.
You mean investors buying up the rights to older songs?
Exactly. Big finance, private equity firms, they're seeing music rights as valuable assets. Think of Universal buying Bob Dylan's catalog, Sony buying Bruce Springsteen's and Michael Jackson's estate's share.
Paul Simon, David Bowie too, right?
Yep, major deals. These aren't just dusty old songs. They're seen as reliable, long-term income streams.
So why the appeal for these investment firms? Is it just steady royalties?
That's part of it. But there can also be tax advantages. Selling the asset might be taxed lower than ongoing income. Plus, managing these complex rights catalogs is something these big firms are set up to do efficiently. It proves older music still has huge value and listener interest.
And when we talk about these deals, we're back to those 2 types of rights again, right? The song and the recording.
Precisely. You've got the song itself, lyrics and music. Those are the publishing rights. And then the specific sound recording, the master rights or phonographic rights. Copyright law gives the owners control over how these are used. Copying, distributing, playing in public, streaming, adapting.
Okay. And how does that work practically? Who manages all this?
In places like the UK, you have collective management organizations, or CMOs. PRS for Music handles rights for songwriters and publishers. That covers both public performances and mechanical copies. Then PPL looks after the rights for the performers and the record labels on the actual recordings.
So they collect the money and distribute it?
Basically, yes. They license the music used and pay out royalties. It highlights how crucial it is, especially if you're collaborating, to agree on who owns what up front and get your work registered properly.
Right. So we've talked about superstars, major deals, shifting industry dynamics. But what about the average independent artist trying to make a go of it today? What's their reality like?
Well, there was a survey in 2023, the Music Industry Report, that paints a pretty sobering picture for independent artists.
Oh.
It found only about 11% of them actually make a living just from music. And a really significant chunk, 41%, earn less than $15,000 a year from music.
Wow. Okay. That's a huge difference from the billion-dollar tours and catalog sales we hear about. What does that tell us about the sort of health of the overall system?
It shows a massive disparity. The survey pointed to the biggest hurdles for these artists. lack of exposure, just not getting heard.
Getting lost in that supply side explosion you mentioned.
Exactly. Financial constraints are obviously huge too, and just the basic difficulty of building a fan base.
Yeah.
Interestingly, even with streaming being everywhere, a lot of indie artists surveyed either weren't on Spotify or had really low listener counts.
So where are they connecting with people?
YouTube came out as the most popular platform for them. And another interesting point, getting a traditional record deal, it wasn't the main goal for most anymore.
Really? What was high?
Things like just releasing their own albums independently, performing live. It goes back to Will Page's point, more competition, more mouths to feed. It's just really tough to cut through.
Which makes someone like Taylor Swift's success even more remarkable, doesn't it? Not just as an artist, but as a business strategist. I saw that IESE Insight article framed her career that way.
Yeah, it's a fascinating lens.
Hmm.
They look at how she differentiated herself. It's not just the songwriting talent, which is obviously immense. It's also that really authentic connection she builds with fans, the honest lyrics, the Easter eggs for dedicated listeners.
The little clues and hidden meanings.
Right. Plus her savvy use of social media and building a really strong team around her. It's all part of the strategy.
And what about creating and capturing value? Like with the concert tickets?
Exactly. The article points out she creates massive value through the songs and the live shows. But then her decision to keep ticket prices relatively accessible, even with insane demand, is a strategic choice. It's balancing immediate profit against long-term fan loyalty and accessibility.
So strategy isn't just a one-off plan.
Not at all. The IESE piece stresses its ongoing, adapting to the market, innovating, protecting the brand's integrity. It's a continuous process.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot. Individual artist power, industry shifts, copyright battles, indie struggles, strategic thinking. And that brings us back to the big money, too. You mentioned private equity getting more involved.
Definitely a major trend in 2024. Music companies, music rights, their valuations are up, and private equity firms are playing a huge role in some massive deals.
Like which ones?
Well, there was Hellman and Friedman taking a big stake in global music rights. Shamrock Capital, remember, they bought Swift's early masters, raised new funds for music investment. Blackstone bought Hipgnosis Songs Fund, and Sony's been active, buying chunks of the Queen and Pink Floyd catalogs.
So huge sums of money are moving around these music rights. The stakes are clearly very high.
Absolutely. It shows just how valuable music IP is considered right now in the financial world.
So wrapping this deep dive up, it's really clear Taylor Swift's impact goes way beyond just selling records or concert tickets. She's influencing how artists operate, how fans engage, the nitty-gritty of copyright law, even the big picture economics of music.
Yeah, we've definitely hit on some key aha moments. That surprising power of physical media, driven by fan connection, the whole evolving dance between artists and the industry in the digital age, and seeing the strategic business thinking behind artistic careers.
It really makes you think, given how Swift has managed to kind of reshape parts of the industry already, what other big shifts could be coming? How are artists going to keep balancing, their creative vision, that crucial fan connection, and just the basic need to make a living in this landscape that keeps changing?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the billion-dollar question now. Definitely something to keep thinking about.